Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanting to make sure that everything is working, and so hopefully that means it is. Um, awesome. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So here is everything is working, and our
So
slideshows for
hopefully that
tonight,
means it is.
and again, just wanting to confirm that all of our sound and audio are working. Um, it's kind of weird because whenever I hit one button, it doesn't always switch over exactly immediately. So so tonight, I hope you're having a wonderful evening. We are having rain. Apparently, it's supposed to be thunderstorming this evening, and I love thunderstorms. Always have.
Sound
And audio are working. The I don't like when it gets kind of chilly when it storms. Whenever I hit one button, the thunderstorms switch over exactly immediately. Tonight we're going to be looking. At the next step, we're going to be looking at our next topic, which is still drawing near. This is a series on drawing near, and this time is drawing near and surrender. Always have. Over the past few weeks, we had looked at drawing near through prayer, drawing near through worship, and now this week we are looking at drawing near through surrender.
Tonight we're going to be looking.
As we get started, looking at our next topic, which is still message that, or the message, the verse we're going to be looking at is actually going to be found drawing near in surrender. Always have. Over the past few weeks, we had. I don't like as drawing near through prayer. It's going to be found in James chapter 4, verses 7 through 10. And in James chapter 4, verse 7 through 10, it says, "Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded." And this passage is a passage that is commonly used in churches to talk about the idea of surrender. I mean, it's basically talking about submitting yourself before God, or taking who you are and allowing it to be submitted completely to God.
And this
passage
is a passage that is commonly
we
used
live in this kind of a paradox of heart and faith.
the idea of
The
surrender.
closer we come to God, the more we realize that we need to release things to God. And it's kind of strange because we as people have this concept that we have to be in control. We have to be in control of our mind. We have to be in control of our thoughts. We have to be in control of everything we do. We have to be in control of our families. We have to be in control of our finances. We have to be in control of our jobs. Everything that our life depends on, we have to be in control. And we begin to develop this control complex. And it's kind of to where if something is not in our control, if we feel like it should be in our control, and we begin to react irrationally, we become anxious, we become frustrated, depressed, panicky when things are not in our control. And especially when it comes to something that we begin to develop are able to control,
And it's kind of to where if something
and then we add someone else to the equation, and suddenly now this thing that we were once able to control is now out of our control. We begin to become very anxious about this situation, and now we feel like if this other person wasn't involved, or this other situation wasn't involved, or this other thing wasn't involved, then maybe we could regain that level of control. But as people, we want to control. We want to control everything. We want to control everything we have to do with in our lives. We want to control how things happen. And when things go out of our control, such as
if this other person
a
wasn't
business
involved,
opportunity
situation
bust
wasn't
and
involved,
suddenly we're out money that we didn't think we were going to be out, or we have a car repair that is all of a sudden an emergency car repair and we don't have the funds to be able to fix it. You know, all of these different things that once they come out of our control, we begin to feel like we are out of control.
Such as
and a business opportunity. You know what that means. You know how that feels. Whenever something that you feel like should be in your control is suddenly no longer in your control, everything feels.
Don't have the funds to be able to
everything mentally, everything emotionally, everything in your life feels like we begin to feel like we are. And sadly, when one small thing happens, many times it has this snowball effect or this domino effect. Whenever one small thing, then suddenly makes something else feel like it's out of control. It makes something else feel like it's out of control. And then the next thing you know, you're not in control of anything. Everything mentally, everything emotionally. And so for us as people, in your life feels like it's, when we talk about rendering control to something else or someone else, many times it's very problematic. It's something that then scares us. It frightens every fiber of our being. And then the next thing you know, you're not in control of anything. But what's crazy is the closer we get to God, the more we realize people in your life feels like the things we need to release to God. Rendering control to something else. Surrender is not about weakness. A lot of times people think of surrender as weakness. They think of, oh, well, someone comes in and they have a gun or something like that, and you surrender to them, that's a sign of weakness. We deal with, or we hear people talk about that, you know, I'm not weak, I'm not going to surrender to this. Or someone who's in a fight, like a boxing match, and they end up ultimately losing, and they feel like it's a sign of weakness because a lot of times people think of surrender as weakness. But true surrender is not a sign of have a gun or something like that. True surrender is a doorway. We deal with, or we hear people talk about that. You know, I'm not weak. I'm not going to surrender to this. No matter what the situation is, whether it be in our own physical lives or our spiritual lives, when we truly surrender, a lot of times people think of surrender as weakness. But it brings this level of intimacy in our life. Have a gun or something like that. And it's the moment that we stop trying to manage our own transformation and our own control that we realize that God's grace can do things that we could never do in our lives. When we live in this culture that is so focused on prizes, so focused on this winner mentality. You have to do this certain thing so that you can win this race. Or you have to do this certain thing so that you can win this business deal. Or you have to do this certain thing so that you can make this much money or that much money or take care of this situation or take care of that situation. And we feel like all of those little pieces so focused on this winner have to be, you have to do this certain thing so that you can win this race. We try to control this certain thing. We try to control the outcomes of our life. We try to control people. Do this certain thing so that you can make this much money or that much money. Or we try to control this situation or take care of that situation. But control itself is a heavy burden. Trying to control everything in our life is actually more of a burden than it is a freedom. We try to control the more we keep our hands clenched holding on to something, the more we try to take care of the situation ourselves and try to do it all by ourselves, the more. But control, despair itself, and fear is a heavy burden we feel inside. Trying to control everything in our life is actually more of a burden than it is our freedom. We try to control to allow the more we keep our hands clenched holding on to of these situations. Try to take care of the situation ourselves and try to do it. When we're trying to control things, we keep our heart guarded. But control, despair itself, but when we keep our heart guarded, we don't trust. Trying to control everything in our life is actually more of a burden. And when we're not trusting God, our souls feel restless. The more we keep our hands clenched, which God wants to bring take care of the situation ourselves and try to do it
When we're trying to control things, we keep our heart.
And again, looking back at this passage, James 4:7-10, it says, "Submit yourselves there before God. Draw near, and He will draw near to you." And notice how this is set up. The verse is set up. First, the surrender has to occur. And once the surrender occurs, that's when the nearness. And again, looking back at this passage, James 4:7, we can't draw near to God unless we're willing to surrender to God. Draw near, and He will draw near. So, as we move on, the first thing we want to talk about is we want to talk about surrender. First is the act that clears space. And once the surrender occurs, surrender is the thing that we do that begins to break down the walls. That begins to break down all of the clutter that we have inside of ourselves. So, as we move on, a few weeks ago we talked about prayer and the importance of how prayer brings nearness to God. Is the act that it opens up that conversation we have between us and the Almighty. Surrender is the thing. Last week we talked about worship. And when we worship, we reorient our hearts. It begins to break down all of the clutter. But when we talk about surrender, we're talking about actually clearing a way directly to nearness. Is the act surrender is not about giving up something. It's never been about just giving up something, just saying, God, I give this up and I don't want to deal with it anymore. I give it up completely. It's never been about giving things up. It's about giving it over. We're talking about actually clearing a way directly. It's the act of saying, God, I trust you. Surrender is not about giving than my own ability to control just giving up something. Just saying, God, I give this up. It's about saying to God, God, I trust you more than myself. I trust you more than my own thoughts and my own abilities. I trust you to take care of this. It's the act of saying, God, I trust you. Now, David in the Old Testament, the psalmist David, the guy whose main focus was worship, that was caught. It's about saying to God, coming back into the city of Jerusalem with the Ark of the Covenant, dancing before God, dancing so mightily and crazily that everyone thought he was crazy. I trust you to take care of it. It's the act of saying, God, I trust you. Now, David in the Old Testament, David knew how the main focus was worship, that was caught. He knew how to let go of control. With the Ark of the Covenant, dancing before, as we just mentioned, in his worship, he let go of control to the point that he danced before the Lord bare and open and allowed God to have the glory. The glory that everyone else should be giving David. And if you remember the story, David and the Israelites had gone to the Philistines and they were trying to recover the Ark of the Covenant. And the problem was the Ark of the Covenant, every time they tried to move it, something happened and someone ended up dying. At one point they had it on a cart with oxen, and as they were pulling it, it shifted and someone reached out to grab it, and suddenly that person was struck down by God because God told them, don't touch the Ark of the Covenant. And David said, nope, that's it. And he moves the Ark back into the town they just left, and he leaves it there for a while. And finally, after thinking through everything, they go back, they get the Ark of the Covenant, they load it up on the rails that they would carry it on, and they carried it in, and now the Ark of the Covenant was traveling the way it was supposed to be, and they were on their way into Jerusalem, and he was so excited, and he moves the Ark back into the town now, and he leaves it there. Most people would have seen that as a great victory for David. They go back, they get the Ark of the Covenant. Most people would have praised David, would have given him the winner prize. They would have given him the award for being the greatest king, for bringing the Ark of the Covenant back into Jerusalem. But David didn't want the glory. Instead, David gave the glory that as a great victory. He surrendered all of that glory that he could have claimed for himself. Most people would have praised David, would given him, and I hate it whenever I hear a preacher get up there and say things like, "Oh, well, I did this, and the greatest king." Or there's this, and some of you who have heard me speak before have heard me mention this. There's a church actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex that has a big sign, and it used to be called all of that glory something that he could claim for himself. Now there's a big sign across the top that says such a church ministries, and it's a person's name. Oh, well, I did this, and then underneath in real small letters it says, and something Church International. I've heard me mention this. There's and every time I see it sickens me because of the fact that that Reverend's name, Reverend so-and-so's Ministry International, is the goal. It's clearly there to make everyone see, oh, well, this is so-and-so's ministry. Real small letters. And the church is just a second by Church International. And it's never supposed to be. It sickens me because of the fact that the focus and glory is supposed to be on God, not on the person. And David is the goal. And so in Psalms 51, when David had gone through one of the biggest failures of his life, so David wasn't a good person. And the church, if you look through the Bible, you find very few people that were actually good people. Abraham was not a good person. Abraham did some really bad things. Supposed to be on God, not on Moses was not a good person. Moses did some really bad things. In Psalms 51, when Joshua was not a good person. He fought battles and killed people. If you look through the Bible, you find everybody would say, "Oh, well, God told him to do that." Well, yes, that's how the Bible presents it. God told him to do that. But the point is, these acts that they were doing, they were not inherently good people. Moses did some really bad things. In Psalms 51, when Joshua was not a good person, but each one of those people killed people. If you look through and knew how to surrender, everybody would say, "Oh, they knew how to give the glory to God." That's how the Bible presents it. God told him to do that. But the point is, these acts that they were doing, the Bible is full of people who weren't inherently good. And even Paul goes on to say in the New Testament, but you can't say anyone's good. No, not one. And knew how to surrender, because people knew how to give. All have that human nature. We all want to bring glory to ourselves. We all want to bring all of this. Well, glory, that's the easiest way to say it. We all want to bring glory to ourselves in our lives. We always want to do these things to build ourselves up, to make ourselves feel better. Knew how to surrender, because people, but the glory should never be about have that human nature. The glory should be about God. We all want to bring glory to ourselves. We all want the church as a whole throughout history has done some really bad things. We all want to bring glory to ourselves in our lives. From the Crusades, killing multiple people, many thousands of people. Because people, but the glory should never be about the church backing dictators and people like Hitler and Mussolini, and the church as a whole throughout history. The church in itself has always really bad things. Proceeded to do all of these things that the Crusades, killing multiple people, many thousands of people. And every time the church, or even the church backing dictators, tries to bring glory to people like Hitler and Mussolini, always isn't doing something. The church as a whole throughout history, the church in itself has always really bad things. Proceeded to do all of these things. And when David did something very wrong, he not only committed adultery with a married woman, but he also every time the church or even the church in Psalms 51, he goes before God, and he doesn't make excuses. He doesn't say, "God, well, it was because she was bathing on the rooftop." The church in itself, it wasn't something where David went through and tried to, and when David did blame everyone else. he not only
like we do,
we try to blame everybody else. Oh, it wasn't my fault that happened because if such and such hadn't done such and such, then this wouldn't have happened.
And he doesn't make excuses. He doesn't say,
God, David didn't try to bargain with her. He didn't try to say, God, if you will do this for me, I will do this for you.
Something where David went through and tried to.
And when David instead, David comes before God with an open heart,
he
not only complete surrender, and he says, "Create in me a clean heart."
Because if such and such hadn't done such and such, then this wouldn't have happened. And he doesn't make excuses. He doesn't say, God,
David recognized that his surrender and recognition of God is what brings transformation.
And tried to. And when David
instead, David comes before God. Transformation begins with complete and utter surrender. And surrender, at first, it always feels like loss. It feels like, well, God, you asked me to surrender this to you. What if you can't handle it? David recognized that his surrender. I mean, we don't say that, right? But sometimes in our head, when we try to hold on to something, we're basically saying, God, what if you can't really handle this situation? What if you can't really take care of this situation? God says, well, give that job situation to me. And we're like, okay, God, but God, I want to keep holding on to it because, and we don't want to tell God, God, we don't trust that you can take care of it, but essentially that's what we're doing. I mean, we don't say that, right? But sometimes in our head, when we try to hold on to something, we're basically saying, God, what if you can't really handle this situation?
But in actuality,
what if you can't really take care of this situation? God says, well, give that job situation to me. And we're like, okay, God, but and every time we release something, holding on to it because we discover the more freedom we have, and the more safe we are in God's. But sometimes in our head, when we try to hold on to something, we're basically saying, God, what if surrender is the practice of breaking, or the practice that breaks pride. God says, well, give that job situation. As we spoke of just a moment ago about the people in the Bible who did all of these really bad things, the more freedom we have, and the more safe we are. But sometimes in our head, when we try to hold on to something, we're basically saying, God, surrender. And we talked about the church and how the church has this tendency to build itself up and make itself feel good. And people want to have the bigger churches and the better churches and the churches that everybody's going to and want to be the preacher that everybody listens to and wants to be all of these really bad things. More freedom we have, and the more true surrender is breaking down pride and fear. Surrender, and we talked about the church and how the church has this. Two of the greatest enemies to surrender are pride. And people want to have the bigger churches and the better churches. We're fearful that if we try to give it up to God, God won't bring it up to us. We're fearful that God will get the glory and we won't. And we don't say that, but essentially that's how we live our lives. And we talked about the church and how the church has this. Two of the greatest enemies to surrender. Pride says, I can take care of this myself. I don't need God. I don't need God to deal with this situation. I can go out there and I can find a way to get enough loans to be able to pay that debt and not have to turn it over to God. Say that because what if God can't take care of it? But essentially, that's or fear says, or pride says, I have problems with that person at work. I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to tell them off. I can do this myself. I can take care of this myself. I don't need God. I don't need God to deal with this. Says God, I don't know if I can go out there and I can find a way. And again, we don't like to say that. Pay that debt and not have to turn it over. We don't like to say, God, I don't know if I can trust you. But essentially, that's or fear says, or pride. And we don't use those words, but in our actions in life, I'm just going to go in there and I'm just. We are essentially saying, God, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't need God. I don't need God to deal with this. Says God, I don't know if I can go out there and I can find a way. And both of these things, we don't like to say that. The I can handle it myself and the God, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can trust you. Keep us separated from. Or fear says, or pride. People talk about how sin separates you from God. Actually, pride and fear are essentially saying, God, I don't know if I can trust you.
And if you notice, the majority of sin, the majority of things that are sinful that keep us from God, the I can handle it myself and the God
are enveloped in pride or fear.
keep us separated from Him.
In Luke chapter 9, verse
People talk
23,
about how
Jesus says,
sin
if
is
anyone
separate
would
from
come
God,
after me, let him deny himself, take up his
we are
cross, separate.
essentially saying God.
Now, this isn't a call to self-hatred. It's not a call to self-resistance. It's not a call to
The majority of
to
things
turning
that
against
are
oneself
sinful
or
that keep us from
self-abuse.
God, the I can handle it myself.
And some churches teach it that way.
enveloped
Some
in
churches
pride
teach
or
people that they should basically hate themselves.
In Luke chapter
You're
9,
no
people
good.
talk about
You're
how
not
sin is
worthy.
anyone
There's nothing good about you. You're worthless. You know, God sees you as this tiny
this isn't a
speck
call to
in the
self-hatred.
universe.
It's not a call
You're
to
nothing more than a
self-resistance.
slug or an
It's not a
ant
call to
before
the
God.
majority
You
of
know,
things
we
turning
get these
against oneself
visual
or
ideas
self-abuse.
from churches many times.
Some churches teach it that way. Some churches teach people that they should basically hate themselves.
They add to that
In Luke
self-hatred.
chapter
You're
9,
no
people
good.
talk about
You're
how
not
sin is
worthy.
anyone
There's nothing good about you. You're worthless.
Picking up
You
your
know,
cross
God
has nothing to
sees
do
you
with
as this
self-hatred.
tiny
This isn't a
speck
call to
in the
self-hatred.
universe.
It's not a call to
You're nothing
releasing
more than a
sin.
slug or an ant. Everything that you have. We get these visual ideas from churches many times. The cross is not just a symbol of punishment as we think about it. We think about the cross in Jesus' standpoint as the symbol of punishment. But actually, the idea of taking up the cross is a place where control, our personal control of things, dies.
Visual ideas.
And we allow love.
The cross is not
truly
just a symbol of punishment.
When we surrender our pride, we make room
the
for our
cross
humanity.
in Jesus' standpoint
And we make
as the
room
symbol
for
of
humility.
punishment.
But actually, when we surrender our fear, we make room for peace. Is a place
And we
where
make room for
control, our personal when we surrender our shame, we make room for grace.
The cross is not just a symbol of
Not only for
punishment. When we
ourselves,
surrender our pride, we
for
make about
room
the
for our
as
humanity.
in Jesus' standpoint.
And the miracle of surrender is that it doesn't diminish us. So
When we
many times
surrender
we
our
get this
fear,
idea of,
we
oh,
make
surrender
room
is
for
going to
peace.
make me smaller. It's going to diminish me. It's going to make me worse. It's going to make me surrender our shame. We make instead surrender builds us up and restores us.
When we surrender our pride,
It returns us to the posture and place that
the miracle
God
of
has
surrender is
for
that it
us,
doesn't
which is
diminish
open
us.
hands.
So many times
we
we
get this
fear.
idea of,
We
oh,
make
surrender
room
is
for
going to
peace.
make me smaller. It's going to diminish me. It's going to
Next,
make me
surrender
worse.
is
When
where
we
true
surrender our transformation starts. Instead, surrender builds.
We
us
often
up.
think about transformation happening
by our own
It
effort.
returns us to the posture.
You know,
and
if I
place
read more,
that
if
God
I read the
has
Bible
for us,
more, if I
which is
pray
open
harder, if I
hands.
do better, if I work harder, if I go to this 12-step group, or if I do that, or if I keep myself from things that are this, and if I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this,
transformation.
we think of transformation as
We often think about transformation happening
by our own
It
effort.
returns us to the posture.
You know,
and
if I
place
read more,
that
if
God
I read the
has
Bible
for us,
more, if I
which is
pray harder, if I transformation
do better, if I work
begins
harder, if I go to
with
this
surrender.
12-step group, or if I do that, or
It is
if
not
I
about
keep
us
myself
trying
from
harder and
things that
striving
are
to be
this,
the
and if I
best.
do this, and I do this,
It is not
and
about
this,
us
and I do
working.
this.
And we talked a few weeks
We
ago
think
about
of
how
transformation
Jesus never
as-
said
We often think about
those who
transformation happening
that God helps those who help themselves. Bible doesn't say it. It's not biblical.
If I read the Bible more, if I pray
It's
harder,
not
if I
about
do
us
better,
trying
if I
harder.
work
It's
harder,
about us
if I go to
trusting
this 12-step group, or if I do
deeper.
that, or
It is
if
not
I
about
keep
us
myself
trying
from
harder and
things that are
striving to
this,
be the
and if I
best.
do this, and I do this,
It is not about us
There's
working. No such thing.
And we
as
talked a few
loving
weeks
people.
ago about how Jesus never said
those. I mean, we're
who,
talking about Jesus.
that
Jesus
God helps those who
went
help
and
themselves.
ate with the poor
Bible doesn't say
people
it.
and
It's
with
not
the
biblical.
tax collectors, and he went and ate with the prostitutes and
about
the
us
drunkards.
trying
He went
harder. It's
and
about
spent
us
time in the homes of people that were
It is not about us
completely
trying harder harder and striving to
by the social standings of that day, immoral, outcast. I mean, he was in the house of Simon the leper.
I mean, we're talking about Jesus.
And if you know anything about biblical days, lepers were outcasts. And with the tax collectors. And he went and ate with the prostitutes and the drunkards. He went and spent time in the homes of people that were completely
been a place that loving
by the social standings of that day,
a person can love too much.
Outcasts. I mean, he was in the house
when
of Simon
we
the leper.
truly surrender,
If you know
we stop striving
to try to earn God's grace.
And he went and ate.
Because remember what grace means? Grace means unmerited.
And spent time in the homes of
There's
people
never
that were
unmerited means something we don't deserve. Favor meaning
the social
favor
standings
that
of that day,
a person can
immoral,
love too much.
outcasts.
So unmerited favor means a favor that we don't deserve.
We stop striving
to try to earn God's grace.
And he went and ate.
Because remember what grace means? Grace means unmerited.
And spent time
We
in the homes of people
surrender to
that
God.
were
Unmerited
and
means
we
something we
stop
don't deserve. Favor
trying
to do it all. Favor.
that a person can
We stop trying to earn
So
God's
unmerited
favor.
favor means
We stop
a
trying to
favor
earn
that
God's
we
acceptance.
don't deserve.
We stop trying to earn the acceptance of others. We stop trying to earn the appreciation of others. We stop trying to earn things on our own. We surrender to God.
Unmerited
And
means
we
something we
stop
don't deserve. Favor
trying. We
to
stop
do it
fighting
all.
to
Favor
control.
that a person can
We stop trying to
and
instead
so unmerited favor
we begin
means
allowing
we stop
ourselves
trying
to
to
earn
that
God's
we
acceptance.
don't deserve.
We stop trying to earn the acceptance of others. We stop trying to earn the appreciation.
Surrender
Surrender is the
We stop
foundation
trying to
earn of obedience things on our own. And it is the space in our spirit that reshapes everything about us. We stop fighting. And it is the moment that we realize
Stop trying to
and instead
that
God doesn't just want us to be successful,
we stop trying to
but God wants us to be surrender. Surrender is the foundation. It's not just about winning these big prizes and these awards and everyone looking at us saying, "Oh, that person is such a great Christian," and saying, "Oh, look at them, they're praying out on the street corner. Oh, they must be devout." And it's not this bigger church and this greater steeple and these bigger signs and all of these big things. That's not what God is wanting.
to surrender.
Surrender
God
is
is
wanting.
It's not just about winning these big prizes and these awards and everyone looking at us saying, "Oh, that person is such a great Christian," and saying, "Oh, look at them, they're praying out on the street corner. Oh, they must be devout." And it's not this
Surrender
bigger church
is the
and this
gate.
greater steeple and these bigger signs and all of these big things. That's not what God is wanting.
Every act of surrender leads to
God
freedom.
is wanting.
Every
It's not
release
just about
leads to
winning
freedom.
these big prizes.
Every
and
time we
these
say
awards
yes
and
to
these
God
things,
leads to a deeper part of us
"Oh, look at them,
in
they're
God
praying out on
and
the street
God.
corner. Oh, they must be devout."
When Moses stood before the burning
surrender
bush,
church
he
is this
had to
greater
surrender from all of his
steeple
excuses,
and these
he
bigger
had a lot.
signs and all of these
Oh
big
God,
things.
I was
That's
born
not
in
what God
I mean,
is wanting.
every
Think about
act
what
of
Moses could have
surrender.
said.
God, I was born in Egypt and I was left in a basket and I was found by the Pharaoh's daughter and she raised me as her own son and I was raised as a prince of Egypt and so on and so on and so on and so on. And then this guy was attacking one of the other Jews and I knew that I was Jewish and so because of that I slew him and I buried him in the sand and everything was okay, but then this person saw me and so then they asked if I was going to and he could have made an excuse after excuse after excuse son and I was raised as a prince of Egypt and so on and so on and so on and so on. And then this guy was attacking one of the other Jews and I knew that I was Jewish and so when Mary received the message from the angel, she had to surrender her own plans.
but then this person
She had plans to get married and raise a family. She had plans to be this major person in her family's life, her household, and instead she basically had to say, "Okay, God,
This guy was attacking one of
if that's what you want."
Jews, and I knew that I was Jewish. And so
When Mary received the message from the angel, when
when
Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, surrender.
She had plans to get married and raise a family.
He had to surrender all of his
be
will.
this major person in her family's
He went
life,
before God multiple
her
times.
household.
God,
And
Father,
instead,
take
she
this
basically
cup
had
from
to
me.
say, okay, God, if it's your will, take this cup from me. Let me not have to do this thing.
The message from the angel.
But
When
not
Jesus was
my will.
in the Garden of Gethsemane, she had plans to get married and raise a family.
He had to surrender
It is not the
all of his
pride and the desire for success and the striving for money and all of this stuff that the world says, oh, this is success. Let
All of the
me
stuff
not
that
have to
hurts.
do this thing.
But not
That doesn't change the
Garden of Gethsemane.
surrender. It is not the pride and the desire for success and the striving for money and
freedom isn't about
all
getting
of this stuff that the world says,
If it's
oh,
your will,
this is
take this
success.
Freedom is a gift.
Let
all of the
me
stuff
not have
of
to
God.
do this thing.
When we turn over
That doesn't change
everything we want,
Surrender.
everything that
It
we
is
would want to
not
do
the
ourselves, we
pride
turn it over to God.
and the desire for success,
And that's when true
and the striving for money and
freedom isn't about
all
getting
of this
So I wanted
stuff
to ask
that
you
the
to think
world
about.
says, oh, this is
What is it
success.
that Freedom you're is a still gift. gripping on?
Let me not have to
What is it that you're holding on to? Is it fear?
When
Is
we
it
turn
resentment?
over,
Is it
everything we
expectation of yourself or of other people?
surrender?
Everything that we
Because
want to
when
do
we come
ourselves,
before
we turn it over
God
to God.
and the desire for success,
And that's when
the
true
invitation
is
is
simple.
striving for money,
Draw
and
near to me,
freedom is
and
about
I will
all
draw
of
near.
this
So I wanted
stuff
to ask
that
you
the
to think
world
about.
says, oh, this is
What is it
success.
that
Freedom
you're
is a
still
gift.
gripping on
Let
and
me
drawing
not
near?
have to
What
do
is it that you're holding on
about
to?
letting
Is it fear?
When
Is
we
it
turn
resentment?
over,
Is it
everything.
surrender?
Expectation of yourself
Is
or
what
of other
shapes
people.
our nearness.
Surrender.
To draw
Because
near
when
and
we come
surrender
before
is to
God,
trust God.
the desire for
To
success,
trust God's
the
hands that they're
invitation.
gentle enough to hold and take care of everything we let go of.
So I wanted to ask you to think about.
It is the belief that the loss of our control
What is it that you're
is
holding
not a
on to?
loss of self,
Is it
but it is a recovery.
surrender
Expectation
of yourself
is
or
what
of other
shapes
people?
our nearness. It is discovering
To draw near
that
and
coming
surrender
closer to
is
God.
God
To
will
trust
come closer
God's
to
hands
God.
that they're gentle enough to
And bring
hold and
true
take care of
freedom.
everything we let go of.
So I wanted to ask you.
So this week, as we continue our
It is the
journey,
belief that the
hear this
loss of
invitation.
our
from God.
control
Draw near
is not
and
a loss
surrender.
of self.
Draw near by
But it is a
releasing
recovery.
everything that you've been holding so tightly to.
Our nearness.
Draw
It is
near
discovering to draw near
that
and
coming
surrender
closer to
is
God because you think you figured it all out.
God
To
will
trust
come closer
God's
to God.
hands that they're gentle enough to
And bring
hold and
true
take care of everything we let go of.
So I wanted to ask you.
But
so this week, as
instead,
we continue our
it is
journey,
because God
that the
hears this
loss of
already
our
reaching out.
control
Draw
is
near
not
and
a
surrender.
loss of self.
Draw near by
But it is a
releasing
recovery.
everything
May the
that
God
you've
who
been
calls you
holding
to
so
surrender
tightly meet you in your
Draw
blessing.
near.
May the
coming
Spirit
closer
who,
to God.
because you think you figured it
Comforts
all out,
you. To trust God's
comforts the
hands
broken
that
in
are
your
gentle
heart
enough to
and
hold
bring
and
true.
take care of
Steady your heart in His trust. But
So this week, as
instead,
we continue our
may
journey,
Jesus, who
God hears
surrendered
us.
all,
Our
teach
control.
us
Draw
that
near
true
not a
freedom
loss of self.
draw near by
His
releasing
open hands would
everything
bring. May the God
that
who
you've been
calls
holding
you to
so
surrender
tightly meet you.
And as you
in
draw
your
near and
blessing.
surrender, may you
May
find
the
the
Spirit
grace
who,
because
that
you
you've
think
been
you
waiting
figured
for
it all
all
out.
along comforts the broken in your heart.
Thank you again.
Steady
Go in
your
peace.
heart